Below, we will discuss the life of Guru Padmasambhava. In this brief biography of Guru Padmasambhava, yesterday we discussed earlier, in the three places mentioned above, various kinds of rampant behaviors from non-Buddhists appeared. Buddhism, whether it was Odantapuri Monastery, Nalanda Monastery, or Vikramashila Monastery, these places centered on India's three great monasteries were subjected to a series of harmful influences. At that time, Guru Padmasambhava practiced the Heruka teachings. When we practice wrathful deities, because each time we practice many wrathful deities, but among the wrathful deities, the most important one, including when we practice the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities, Heruka is in the center. This is very important. So if we accomplish his practice, all other peaceful and wrathful deities are naturally accomplished. This is extremely important. Then it said that Guru Padmasambhava took out the wrathful Kala that conquers the three realms. Didn't three Kalas appear just now? With the appearance of three Kalas, actually these three Vajra Kilas were used by three people to subdue these non-Buddhists. Among them, Guru Padmasambhava, relying on his miraculous powers, he instantly arrived in the south at a place called Jamara that we mentioned yesterday. Then he took that Vajra Kala and inserted it into a tree trunk near that genital organ. As a result, all the surrounding forests were completely burned. Moreover, Maheshvara's genital organ, most of it was completely destroyed, entirely reduced to ashes. From that time onward, Buddhism no longer suffered harm from them. Among non-Buddhists, these genital organ symbols are quite common. In places like Bhutan, these symbols are also very numerous. In their history, there was once a great accomplished master who, through this special conduct, liberated 5,000 women. This appeared to commemorate him. So for the local people, they don't regard these as particularly strange or unusual, not at all. Including in Bumthang, there are also various such symbols in those areas. Including in shops, many places have them. Everyone is accustomed to such things. Originally, when I was writing Recollection of the Time Gone By, a Dreamy Pilgrimage with My Guru 30 years ago, I originally wanted to write about this, but later didn't have the courage. Many such things, including tourists nowadays. There are also various opinions, but for the local people, they have no attachment to opinions. Indeed, for them, it's just like in the Tibetan region, the union images. They don't consider it something particularly inappropriate. Once one becomes accustomed to something, many customs become quite natural. Moreover, they call them phallus worship, and everywhere, in their merchandise and all sorts of things. Actually, Bhutan is a truly Buddhist country. And among all the places I've been to, Bhutan is the one I most long for, especially since it practices Mahayana Buddhism, particularly if you want to develop faith in Guru Padmasambhava. If you really go to Bhutan, you'll basically understand what Guru Padmasambhava is really like. It's even better than the Tibetan region and Nepal, because in any place in Bhutan, there are basically footprints of Guru Padmasambhava, including the fact that he personally manifested various miraculous powers, and the monasteries he established are very numerous. So if you truly want to develop faith in Guru Padmasambhava, although going to Bhutan costs a bit more, besides your own expenses, you have to pay $100 every day. So they also rely on tourism for their livelihood. But Bhutan truly, if you want to develop faith in Guru Padmasambhava, one place is the Yutsang area of the Tibetan region. There are also a few monasteries there. Most importantly, when you arrive in Bhutan, naturally many people develop faith in Guru Padmasambhava. This is extremely important. Just now, no longer suffering harm. From that time onward, the offerings to Odantapuri Monastery were also restored. This is the account of Guru Padmasambhava's subduing activities. A consort of the Mandala, a yogini named Ansakjan, she also took out a wrathful Amrita swirl kala and inserted it into that lake in Vangala. As a result, that Naga, including its retinue, were all taken away. They all fled. 7 days later, the lake also dried up, and those non-Buddhist schools were consequently destroyed. This is the second situation. The third, at that time when Guru Padmasambhava was in retreat, there was a retreat guardian. The retreat guardian was a yogin from Kamarupa. His name was Ratnashla. Ratnashla also took out a small Vajra Kala and inserted it at Rajagra. Wasn't there a crystal rock, as mentioned yesterday? He inserted it into this crystal rock. and as a result, the crystal rock completely shattered, thus playing an extremely important role for Buddhism. Later, these two both attained the Vidyadhara level and subsequently disappeared. Of course, if they wish, they can manifest again. As for Guru Padmasambhava, at that time he was ordinary, appearing as an ordinary person. In this way, at that time, whether in Nepal or in Bhutan or in India, many manifestations appeared. Now here we all know that this is mainly the womb birth version of Guru Padmasambhava's biography. I remember at the very beginning of the Rinchen Terzo, at that time there was a transmission reading. At this time it's all at the very beginning of the Rinchen Terzo. So this is very important. From the perspective of the womb birth version of Guru Padmasambhava, I also mentioned briefly earlier, generally speaking, Guru Padmasambhava was born 8 years after the Buddha's parinirvana. Then I remember Dudjom Rinpoche's History of the Nyingma School of Tibetan Buddhism. The second Dudjom Rinpoche composed this biography of Guru Padmasambhava. Now in this work, I remember when he was writing about Guru Padmasambhava at that time, in the year he wrote the Buddhist history, it said that from when Guru Padmasambhava was born in Danakosha Lake to his time, it was 2,838 years. Dudjom Rinpoche wrote this at that time. He said, I am now composing this, and from when Guru Padmasambhava was born is 2,838 years. When Dudjom Rinpoche wrote that, it was 1962. From 1962 until now, there are another 63 years. If we add 63 years to 2,038 years, it's actually 2,901 years, basically like this. I took a look at this. In this year's Larung calendar, at the front, it discusses Guru Padmasambhava's birth year, and it's also recorded this way. If this is the case, then at that time, the time that Dudjom Rinpoche mentioned, should be the same as the Phugpa school's calculation, because our calendar here now is basically all calculated using the Phugpa school's calendar. In that case, this year, counting from the birth until now, if we calculate this time, it's 2,901 years since Guru Padmasambhava's birth. Then from the Buddha's birth to this year, it's also calculated as 2,986 years. I saw it seen 2,986 years since the Buddha's birth. In that case, now isn't it commonly acknowledged to be over 2,500 years, about 2,560 or 70 years? In that case, is this contradictory? Actually, this is not contradictory. I should probably explain this reasoning to everyone. This is still quite important, I think. I feel that our Phugpa school's Buddhist calendar and the Han region's Buddhist calendar should be relatively the same. The Han region's Buddhist calendar and the Phugpa school's Buddhist calendar are the same. If we compare them with the current Theravada Buddhist calendar, when we compare them, there's approximately a 400-year difference in between, about a 400 to 500-year time difference. Then why is this reasonable? Actually, when we Buddhists speak in the future, according to the Mahayana Buddhist perspective, from the Buddha until today, we shouldn't say over 2,500 years. We should say 3,000 years. This would be more reasonable. 3,000 years is more reasonable because our Phugpa school also says nearly 3,000 years, just a few more decades until 3,000 years. In the Han region's calculations, it's also 3,000 years. Then what's the reason for this? Previously in 1950, at that time in the capital of Sri Lanka, 29 countries held a meeting called the World Fellowship of Buddhists. At that time, it seems over 100 people participated, and they themselves established, according to that year, a relatively common statement. The Buddha came here over 2,500 years ago. This is what we now commonly call the world's Buddhist calendar calculation. But later, the Han region's Venerable Xuyun was quite opposed to this. Why? He said, our Han Chinese Buddhism's successive generations' Buddhist calendar is over 3,000 years. This time they themselves started acknowledging this Buddhist calendar. In this way, it means being irresponsible toward history. Actually, his statement, I also recently researched some materials. In the end, there is still something relatively reliable. There is something called the Records of Strange Events in the Book of Zhou. This scriptural reference, perhaps it will be used, perhaps not, but you should still note it. There is a Records of Strange Events in the Book of Zhou. That Records of Strange Events in the Book of Zhou actually dates to the 24th year of King Zhou of Zhou. At that time, it was the year of Jiayin, which is our current tiger year. On the 8th day of the 4th month, rivers began churning, and well water began overflowing, including palaces, residences, mountains, rivers, and the earth. Everything was shaking. At this time, 5-colored light entered the Taiwei, inside the imperial palace. Then at that time, in the west, some red light also appeared. At this time he inquired about it. He had a person under him. He asked him. At that time King Zhou of Zhou asked a person named Xuyun, "What auspicious omen is this?" At that time Xuyun told him, "A great sage has appeared in the west. Such a person has been born in the west. Therefore such an auspicious sign has appeared." At that time King Zhou of Zhou then said, "What does this mean for our country?" He said, For our country it means nothing now, but after 1,000 years his voice and teachings will be able to come to our place." Then King Zhou of Zhou recorded this matter and buried it in the southern outskirts as a symbol. This is clearly present in our current records of strange events in the Book of Zhou. Now at that time, the 8th day of the 4th month when this appeared. What time was this? 1027 BCE. At that time during King Zhou of Zhou, this auspicious sign appeared. 1027 BCE. This year should be when the Buddha was born. If we calculate this way, aren't we now in the year 2025? If we add 1027 years to 2025, it's actually 3052 years. As for 3052 years, actually, didn't I just mention this? Between the Phugpa school's perspective, I calculated a difference of 66 years. For example, according to the Phugpa school, it's not quite 3,000 years yet. Over 2,900 years, it considers it 3,050 years. In this way, between us, there's approximately this difference. Actually, according to the Han region's perspective, why is the Buddha's birthday now all on the 8th day of the 4th month? Just now in King Zhou of Zhou's book, it's already explained very clearly, the 8th day of the 4th month. So the entire Han Chinese Buddhist perspective is that the Buddha's advent should be 3,000 years ago. In the Tibetan region, according to the Phugpa school's calendar, it's over 2,900 years, so these two differ by several decades, a 66-year gap in between. The Buddha later passed into parinirvana during King Mu of Zhou. King Mu of Zhou should be 949 BCE. So regarding this, I hope perhaps we'll use it, perhaps not, but I had some doubts at first, because previously Set and Shabdrung had a calendar calculation. In it he cited many things, including Kedrup Je's calculations, the Phugpa school's calculations, as well as various calculations from the Sakya school. It was explained quite clearly, but he also didn't reach a conclusion about which one is more reasonable, so perhaps everyone needs to compare. If we know that the Buddha came to this world over 3,000 years ago, or nearly 3,000 years ago, then Guru Padmasambhava being 901 years from now would be reasonable. This makes sense. This reasoning, whether Dudjom Rinpoche's Buddhist history or our current common Phugpa school statement, these two should match and can be stated. So regarding this, everyone might also think about it. Buddhism's transmission. Didn't it just say in there? He said, now for China it means nothing, but later, after over 1,000 years, it will be transmitted to China. Indeed, it was also like this. At that time, it was the Western Zhou period. Later, Buddhism's transmission to China was approximately the history of Luoyang's White Horse Temple. I've discussed this before. Between these, there were exactly 1,091 years during Emperor Ming of Han. So, at that time, that Xuyun was quite remarkable. This minister under him at that time directly told King Zhou of Zhou, "Now it means nothing. Indeed, in the West, such a great person has been born, but after another 1,000 years, such a great person's advent." In that case, later indeed it was 1,091 years afterward. That year, Buddhism was transmitted to the Han region. Now, regarding this time compared with the Tibetan region, many great masters also say the Tibetan region was slightly later. So looking at this aspect, if the Buddhist calendar and the Han regions, because many of our calendar calculations are actually closely related to the Han region's I Ching. These are closely related. In terms of calendar calculations, many are the same. If we combine this, then perhaps now Sri Lanka, including Thailand, Myanmar, and many places, actually they're not completely consistent either. It's just that back then they held a meeting and designated the Buddhist flag, designated the Buddha's birth year, and spoke of it commonly this way. But regarding this, there are also many common and uncommon statements, including the Buddha's enlightenment, the manner of enlightenment, exoteric, esoteric, common vehicle, and uncommon vehicle. all have different statements. So for us to determine such times with great certainty may not necessarily be determinable, not only in our Buddhism, for all the world's great figures' histories as well, their birth years. Some know the birthday but don't know when they passed away. Some know when they passed away but don't know their birthday, including in much of history now. It's also like this. So I think that in our process of studying Guru Padmasambhava's biography, basically, if others raise questions, we also have these general bases. Should we think about this? And we ourselves also feel that from the Buddha's advent until now, and from Guru Padmasambhava's advent until now, approximately how much? We think that in the future we should say it's 3,000 years of history. This more closely matches our history. Let's stop here for today.
Bandara Padma Sodargye